Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Trekyards Originals. I'm Captain Foley.
And I'm Commander Cockings, and yes, it's another great episode of Trekyards Originals. Now, just what is Trekyards Originals, you might ask? Well, it's a show where we take a look at design done by one of you guys and flesh it out into amazing Trek glory.
Yes, we work with the designer of the ship to give the ship a history and also help with special features and abilities as well. Then we craft all this into a very interesting narrative to present to all of you.
But not only that. We also have a wonderful team of creative people behind the scenes and 3D people especially, Barry Chapman in this case, to make the ship in 3D based on his instructions, and I bring it to life animations, pictures, and make it seem like just another ship of the fleet from Trek.
So without any further delays, I'd like to present our co-host for this episode and the designer of this awesome ship, Mr. Tommy Perron. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's a really real pleasure to be here.
It's here for two in fact, because we're doing a two-part, because there's so much on this ship to talk about. But first episode, we'll deal with the ship's in-universe things, and in part two, we'll talk to Tommy about his design and ask him the questions of how on earth this thing came to be.
So it is my pleasure to present to you all the Inquisitor class, USS Torquemada.
To start out with, every good ship needs a good motto to adorn the dedication plaque, and this one is no exception. So in the famous words of Sir Winston Churchill, it is not enough that we do our best. Sometimes we must do what is required. And this motto was the ideal fit for this new class of starship, designed with a particular focus in mind.
Following the events of Wolf 359, the Dominion War, the Battle of Sector 001, the Breen attack on Earth, and the Shinzon coup, and development of the warship Scimitar, a lot of bad things happened in the last couple of years, Stuart. Wasn't good post-TNG. It was clear that Starfleet has been very ill-prepared for war. It was therefore decided to envision a massive starship with more firepower than any regular Starfleet ship by their standards. A ship so intimidating and so imposing that perhaps even the knowledge of its existence could possibly stop any threat before they could even begin and take a step further towards galactic peace. But this decision was not reached overnight, nor was it a straightforward development process. It was rather bumpy to arrive at this quite radical decision.
While being one of the Inquisitor class design, the ship we will be looking at in particular is the upgraded USS Torquemada NCC 105366, or Inquisitor Mark II, and she was launched in 2385. She is listed as a command and assault carrier and measure in at 1,400 meters long, 755 meters wide, with 90 decks in her 310 meters tall design.
The ship had a crew complement of 3,000 personnel with an emergency evacuation limit of 10,988. Couldn't fit an extra 12 people on there to make it 11,000, but that's okay.
I was about to say, Mark III, take out one broom closet.
She was powered by a dual warp core system. This experimental system utilized 2 warp cores, each operating at low or medium power levels to accommodate all ship's systems and regular operations.
This approach reduced the strain and wear on each warp core and significantly increased their lifespan. Even though this feature resulted in more regular maintenance and more staff to operate, it was perfectly suited for this vessel's requirements. The gargantuan amount of supplemental power generated by this approach also made it possible for many large-grade industrial replicators to be utilised as onboard factories of sorts, if and when required.
The prototype, or first of the class, the USS Inquisitor, actually used already existing warp cores in its initial build. However, when it came time to make the additions that were required for the newer Torquemada design, all new larger warp cores were designed and constructed that were specifically intended to work in unison with each other.
This redesign upscaled the size of the ship and internals somewhat, so it actually has different dimensions than the class's namesake. In fact, because of the upscaling, the ships are actually quite different. There was only one true Inquisitor class constructed under the battleship moniker. This new design is similar, but on a much more massive scale.
Yeah, I should actually have gone with a new class name, really, for this one, but as it's no longer a battleship, but instead a command and assault carrier.
The ship had a standard cruising speed of warp 8.2, but utilized both warp cores to achieve a maximum warp of 9.98 for up to 12 hours, and then had to substantially reduce speed to allow a cooldown period for the plasma conduit to prevent complete burnout. This high speed was achieved in a process very similar to afterburners on today's modern-day military aircraft, essentially dumping raw plasma into the system to max out performance.
Now, moving on to offensive systems, this was loaded for bear, and having learned some lessons from the Enterprise's run-in with Shinzon's Scimitar, had upgraded the weapon system somewhat from the original Inquisitor design. This thing has 44 phaser banks designed around a new tandem phaser system. The idea is that all phaser banks have a twin right beside them. Those can work independently, each hitting different targets, or in pairs, both hitting the same target.
Even if this system requires more overall energy consumption, it allows for all the phaser banks the double amount of shots than other ships. Also, this prolongs the lifespan of said phaser banks, diminishing the frequency of phaser energy cell replacement, and doubles the potential power output of each phaser hit without burning out the banks.
In addition, there are also two phaser lance cannons. These are connected directly to the warp core and harness a substantial amount of raw power, and can even be used to purge excess plasma built up from sustained top speed warp flight. She also has a total of 44 dual quantum photon torpedo launchers.
And unlike most designs, these launchers are positioned all over the ship to allow for maximum coverage of all firing arcs, with no blind spots. Standard full torpedo complement was 3,000 photon torpedoes and 2,000 quantum torpedoes. Should the need arise, some of these torpedoes could be transferred to carried escort ships in either the port or starboard tactical hulls.
Defences consisted of primary and secondary regenerative shielding and Type 10 monotanium ablative hull armour. This new type of armour was specifically designed for the Inquisitor class. It is lighter and thicker, making the hull able to absorb even a shieldless hit by conventional photon torpedo without any significant hull breach.
Its armor and hull configuration, in conjunction with its massive size, gives the Torquemada the ability of ramming almost any smaller starship without taking too much damage. Think about the Star Destroyer in Rogue One. The new alloy designed for the ship hull construction was taken from Voyager's computer scans of the Devor and Emergent warships from the Delta Quadrant. Using the scan, they were able to develop a new, more resilient alloy.
The Federation also developed and utilized stealth technology in this design because nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Get it? See what I did there? Starfleet and Section 31 used a loophole in the Accords with the Romulans that allows for the specific cloak or stealth technology to be legal. It mainly utilizes the ship's shield emitters in conjunction with the monotanium component of the Type 10 hull armor to project a sensor dead spot that hides the ship from sensors and prevents any light or energy emissions and reflections to be visible.
Since technology is entirely different from the standard cloaking technologies, it counts as simply a stealth mode, therefore totally immune to the Treaty of Algernon, which strictly limits the Federation from utilizing cloaking technology. Minimal shielding is active while using the stealth mode, but the additional armour deployed on the ship compensates for this design weakness, as the ship has heavily armoured warp nacelle designs and a specifically armoured bridge dome.
Early during the ship's development, the lead designer wanted to break the usual bridge on top Starfleet trope by putting the bridge deeper inside the ship, but was challenged by other designers that this could affect crew morale.
They stated that doing this would be placing senior officers' lives above the ones of the simple crew, and that this wasn't the way things had worked in Starfleet's 200-year tradition. Acknowledging the point, the decision was made to keep the bridge in the usual spot, but added more layers of armor in that section.
The ship could only run at maximum warp 5 while stealth cloak was active, and could fire weapons, but would need to reposition itself each volley to prevent enemy sensors from establishing a lock-on. This void, or Type 0 type of cloak, as it has come to be called, didn't have the usual shimmer as seen in some clone technologies, and did not present like any other cloaks.
With a standard cloak technology, stars were still visible in the area of the cloak ship. However, with this stealth technology, there was essentially just a dead spot of black nothingness visible. Upon decloaking, the ship would just fade into sight with no visible distortions.
The design also incorporates 9 shuttle bays with 2 forward fighter launch bays, mostly used for Peregrine Mark II fighters. There is a large central corridor linking the central shuttle bays and the forward fighter bays. Also included are 2 ventral escort ship bays, which house either Defiant class or Rhode Island class ships. These are ready to be launched at a moment's notice if the ship is in a battle situation, or if taken unawares, can be ready for deployment within 20 minutes.
The other craft housed on board consisted of 112 work bees, 12 autonomous sensor platforms, 16 Argo-class shuttle, 24 either runabouts or Delta Flyer-class shuttles, 1 captain's yacht, which is a variant of the Sovereign-class Calypso, 30 Type 9 shuttles, 8 Type 11 shuttles, and 38 Peregrine-class attack flyers Mark II.
This new flyer uses a monotanium-imbued hull armor that makes it harder for the targeting scanners to pinpoint, making them less of a casualty-heavy ship than its Dominion War predecessor. The ship has 3 main computer cores, 6 holodecks, including 2 that are 3 decks high for vast training exercise or ambitious simulation, 4 hydroponic bays, including a far bigger one similar to some space station hydroponics garden. And the ship is lined with 2,112 escape pods.
The primary and secondary deflectors include a feature which allows them to be hidden by retractable panel doors when not in use, or if the ship initiates its ramming speed protocol. As we mentioned earlier, the new alloys involved in the ship's hull construction, as well as the additional armor plating, makes this ship very capable of ramming ships if the need arises.
In such cases, these shutter doors deploy and protect the more delicate sensor suite platforms from damage. They're also used when the vessel is actively hidden by the stealth mode and not moving to reduce sensor emissions.
As mentioned earlier as well, there is an onboard factory and replicator facility, allowing for the building of any shuttles or small craft type. This also provides the capacity of repairing the carried Defiant class escort, or indeed any destroyer or survey class that may be docked at the given time depending on the mission parameters. The ship also has several observation lounges and about 8 times the cargo capacity of any Galaxy-class ship. In addition, it also has 8 times the deuterium storage space of any Galaxy-class.
This allows for longer missions away from any of the core systems where resources may be at a premium. In fact, some of the deuterium can be used to refill the carried Defiant class ships or, again, any other vessels they are carrying or may encounter in their travels.
A lot of the ship's interior is customizable, allowing for quick evacuation of the forward sections in case of the ramming scenario. During wartime, many of its research systems are removed for weapon storage, and during large operations can resupply smaller ships with a range of different torpedo types, or add them to its magazines for large-scale long-range bombardments of enemy positions suitable for aiding in withdrawal actions. Well, that's it for the ship's features. Now let's move on to its rather rocky development history.
In 2367, a very promising young engineer named Commander Volker loses his husband during the Battle of Wolf 359, and as a result began to work tirelessly on a new proposed design for a Starfleet battleship. He christened the project the Inquisitor class, since those historic figures titled instilled fear in most people and helped in keeping a peace preemptively, as was the proposed intention of this ship design.
The following year, in 2368, Starfleet flatly denies any resources for the project's continuation, stating, "This is a betrayal of everything the Federation stands for. It's one thing to be prepared for a threat, but this battleship project would turn Starfleet into the very thing we want to stop."
That is it for this week's Trekyards. It's done! But next week, part 2, tune in to the epic conclusion.